Well, hello there, you scrub lords, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the long-awaited T30 battle rating 6.7 rank 4 heavy tank for the US tech tray. I have been waiting for this thing for literally years since they announced the T29, and as much as I love my T29, my old reliable, for 6.7 battle rating US, and as much as I love the T34, the other old reliable 6.7 battle rating for the US, I could not wait to get my hands on this thing. And you know what? In a nutshell, this thing delivers. Now, if you want to learn a little bit more about the history and where this thing actually came from, there is actually a video on my channel called Gun Tank Episode 2, which I will link in the top right-hand corner of the video. If you want to go and see the actual history of these vehicles, I explain everything there. First, we're going to take a very, very quick look at the armor and tell you that there's really not that much different here. The armor is almost exactly the same as the T29. The layout is a tiny bit different, but really not substantially different from the T29. It uses the T34 uses the same hull and engine, the 810 horsepower, and that is because the T34s, in order to save money, they basically just developed a slightly different turret casting and put a little bit more room in there and stuck the T34's gun in it, but used this exact same T30 hulls again to save money in taxpayer dollars. In that context, armor is exactly the same. It is missing the extra 100mm backplate that the T34 has, and this backplate was put on to act as a counterweight for the longer barrel of the 120mm gun, which would have made the tank a little bit more front-heavy. Weight-wise, these vehicles are exactly the same, the T30 and the T34, and they are a little bit heavier than the T29. But that's pretty obvious to anybody who's played the T29 and the T34. T29, despite having a little bit less horsepower, is a little bit more maneuverable, it's a little bit lighter, and you can feel that in the way that these vehicles handle turns and crossing terrain. However, all things considered, the T34 is functionally the same in both mobility and armor as the T29 and T34. Now, let's go into the ammunition. So, I realize that this is going to be... I'm going to sit here and talk about the ammunition for a moment, because the ammunition is interesting. The first round that you get is the M112B1 armor-piercing ballistic capped APHE round. Now, this round is currently overperforming at the moment with 197mm of penetration. US documents state that this round was only capable of about 170mm of penetration, and was one of the main reasons for the development of the T29E1. The T29E1 does feature 197mm of penetration, but still really not enough to give it some actual tank-killing capabilities. There are some myths floating around out there that the vehicle was tested with high-explosive plastic, or HESH, and that there was a heat round developed for it. Neither of these are true from what I've actually been able to dig up. The only rounds that this vehicle was equipped, the only other round that this vehicle was equipped with that is not here in this list is the T35E1 HVAP, basically a giant APCR round, and this thing is actually giant. It is a 90mm tungsten core in a 155mm softer steel jacket. And that thing is insane. It could do about 315mm of penetration, and it did particularly well, actually, against even sloped armor. So, hopefully, if Gaijin ever implements the T35E1 HVAP for this thing, it will actually get some proper penetration values. And it'll get some proper penetration performance against sloped armor. Speaking of sloped armor performance, by the way, the M112B1 has some weird modifiers equipped on it. It is very similar in performance, for whatever reason or another, to the 85mm slope modifiers. Basically meaning that this round has a much higher propensity to penetrate sloped armor, despite having less penetration against sloped armor than the T29E1. So, why that specifically is only on this particular type of round, the round that was considered much worse, I don't know. But maybe that's something that Gaijin will change, maybe it's something that Gaijin will leave alone. Either way, I'm not totally complaining. It means I can penetrate IS-6s about 40% of the time. And by the way, the protection analysis is lying to you. I did plenty of test drives, or I did several test drive shots with my friend Invincible Hetzer, who has an IS-6, and we found that it was really hit or miss where you actually penetrate on this thing. So the protection analysis says it'll go through pretty much every time. In my experience, it went through about 40% of the time. So keep that in mind if you're thinking of using this ammunition type against other enemy vehicles. However, I'm mousing over the M107 here because the M107 I found was actually the most effective round on this particular vehicle. And the reason for that is because it has 6.86 kilograms of high explosive filler in that thing. And as a result, this thing is a hell of a lot of splash damage. Now, what that means is that, for example, if you come across a Panther or a King Tiger or whatever, you can basically just splash the front of the turret, and the splashing fragmentation will go down and set off the ammunition, and it will do it on a pretty regular basis. And because of the 54 millimeters of penetration, it will absolutely wreck light vehicles. Anything that has anything less than about 60 millimeters of armor on this thing, it will just do this. Now there's also the M110 white phosphorus round. Now, in War Thunder, it's just a basic smoke round, but the smoke rounds on a vehicle like this are interesting because the reload time on this thing with an ace crew is 29.9 seconds, which is rough. And that's really something that dictates this thing's playstyle. And we'll get more into that when we actually look at the replay that I have here. But the M110 smoke round, it's more useful for blinding enemies at long range when you're still trying to get into more effective range with your gun. And the reason for that is that the muzzle velocity on all of these shells is really quite low for this battle rating. The high explosive and smoke rounds only travel at 717 meters per second, as you see here, and the armor-piercing rounds are actually worse at 670 meters per second. So hitting targets at longer ranges without any sort of range-finding ability and just Kentucky windage or guesswork is really, really quite difficult unless you're very, very good at it and have a lot of practice. And I don't think many people have a lot of practice, considering the vehicle's only been around for about 1 day. So make liberal use of the range-finding ability and you'll start to see substantially better performance at getting first-round hits at long range. Alright, now let's move on to the replay that we have in front of us and talk about how the vehicle actually works in combat. So, here we are on Corellia with the T30. This is a game I played on my live stream last night, so if you're wondering why this is a little familiar, that is why. Myself and Richard are coming up on the cap circle here, and there is Puma, who nearly took him out there, trying to get on the cap a little early, I see. Not today, fella, not today. I gave him a 155mm present right to his face, and as you can see, well, anything with any sort of light armor, again, just kind of disappears magically when you hit them in the face with a 155mm HE round. So we're going to sit here on the camp, we're going to grab ourselves some extra score and secure ourselves an extra respawn if need be, and we're going to go ahead and push forward here. Now I do have the name tags turned on. I'm going to experiment here in the replay a little bit. You might see them turn off and on. That's just me pressing buttons and figuring out what I wanted to do. Ultimately, I decided to leave the name tags on with vehicle highlights around them. This is a function of the replay. I am not cheating. Speaking of deleting things, yeah, that's basically what you do to Panthers every time you hit them with one of these rounds. It's really satisfying, I'm not going to lie. I mean, as much as I love my Panthers, it is very satisfying coming up on one and just knowing, oh buddy, there's nothing you can do. So I see the Tiger II down there. Originally I mistook that for an E100, I don't know why. But I did a double take, looked at it, it's Tiger II. And so, in order to take out a Tiger II with one of these rounds, what you're going to need to do is do what I am going to do here, and splash the side of the turret, and the reason for that is exactly as you see there. The splash fragments tend to go down through the top armor of the tank, and detonate the ammunition racks and the sponsons. Now this RU-251 here, I don't know what he was doing. I think he was AFK or something like that, but he's turning his turret back and forth, so maybe he's running a bot program or something. Although I don't think I've ever seen a bot in War Thunder, or at least not an effective one anyways. This guy's just sitting there. I'm a little confused, so I decided to do a range finding estimate, and you'll see me adjust my sight accordingly. You won't be able to see it in the replay, but yeah. I also totally stole that kill from the T30 behind me. Sorry, pal. But the stream wants action. Anyways, so we've taken all the threats I can see currently. Now that Waffenträger over there just took a shot. It just takes a shot at us, and I was thinking to myself, "You sneaky little bastard!" Like, I don't think I've seen very many people go up into that spot, especially not with a Waffenträger. I'm gonna have real difficulty hitting this guy, even with using the range finding ability. The guy's about 650 meters, if I recall correctly. And I tried to eyeball it at the last second there, and I think if I had just taken the range and adjusted it a tiny bit less, that would have landed right in his face and taken him out. But such is the life of a low velocity, high explosive round. Now we're gonna take another shot at him. And that one's going to fall a little bit short. I remember on stream I was like, how did that fall short? It's... Like I said, the rounds are not particularly high velocity, and getting used to this gun is going to be one of the challenges of it. Now, I don't want to make it seem like it's a horrible gun. It's certainly not. In fact, it's actually pretty close in performance to the Panzer IV F2. So if you're actually really good at the Panzer IV F2's 75mm gun, then this should actually feel quite right at home. Now, I fired another shot there, and he moved out of the way just in time. I've actually killed quite a few Tigers while playing this thing or enemy tanks in general, by landing high explosive shells on the barrels of the gun, and then just having the round splash down and kill everything. I was going to go over here and support Invincible Hetzer, Richard, in his IS-2, but he took care of the Tiger 2 that was bothering him over there just fine. And I'm going to finish up my reload and start looking for more targets. Now, my preferred method of playing this vehicle is really as you see here. It's to sit back in the second or third line and to essentially snipe with giant high explosive rounds. And the reason I do this is because while the reload time on this thing is really quite long, and trying to... Oh, by the way, this is a bit of a threading the needle shot there. I was trying to avoid hitting the tree, and I succeeded pretty spectacularly. But again, as I was saying, the T30 does not do very well in close-in, brawling fights. It makes shooting easier, yes, but the long reload time means that if you make any mistakes, you're stuck there totally helpless for about 30 seconds. And if you screw up your shot, especially at close range, the enemy will get all the time in the world to take an easy shot into your weak points. And at close range, the weak points are actually fairly easy to hit. Mainly the driver's hatches, the top of the driver's hatches extend out a little bit higher than the rest of the hull and can be hit by enemy tanks, and even like 5.7 tanks like a Tiger will punch right through that. Your lower plate is a weak point. The optical sight on the gun mantlet, that is also a weak point. It's only like 32mm, and you could actually penetrate rounds through that. Now, going back to the game here, there is a Flakpanzer 341 down this ridgeline. And as I come down here to kill this guy, I want to give my overall thoughts on the vehicle. I really like this vehicle. I honestly think that this is probably worth the grind. I know that some people are really skeptical about it, and certainly I was when I went into this thing, but honestly, over the last 12 games or so that I've played in it, I've come to really enjoy this vehicle. And like I said, when I first started playing, I wasn't too sure whether or not I liked it. It was kind of a meh vehicle to me when I first looked at it. The stat card didn't look particularly impressive. The reload time is really long. But at the end of the day, it's effectively a T-34 in terms of feel, but with the type of fun that you only get out of a KV-2. And even at the higher battle rating, it doesn't seem to have made much of a difference. And while, yeah, you can get up-tiered against some pretty stiff opponents, it's not the worst battle rating in the world. And even in up-tiers that I got thrown into, I found that this thing actually performed pretty admirably. The T30 may not have the best armor-piercing rounds in the world, and really, I think that if you're using this vehicle for the armor-piercing rounds, you're doing it wrong. the high explosive rounds are really going to be the way to go with this vehicle, in my personal opinion. Now, if you prefer the M112B1 and its incredible sloped armor performance, go for it. But for me, if I take this vehicle out and go and play it, I'm going to be taking the high explosive. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this sort of walkthrough of my thoughts on the T30 and the statistics of it. If you have any further questions about it, please leave them down in the description below. Or in the comment section below. I will be checking over the comment section for the next 2 or 3 days. So leave a comment and let me know what you guys think. Are you guys going to sell this vehicle? Are you guys going to keep it? Are you gonna wait and see what happens? Because that is an option too. You don't have to. Use the coupon right away once you earn it. You can hold on to it and see how the prices end up on the market and see how many people are buying it before you decide whether or not to sell it. So, without further ado, this has been Many Miles Away. Keep your tracks checked, keep your binders in place, keep around the tube, and I will see all of you guys in the next video. Have a good one, everybody.